Once upon a time, in the depths of the ocean, a ship was lost, and with it all those on board disappeared. No one knew what happened to this ship and its crew, and the legend of this ship began to live its own life. One day, a group of explorers decided to go in search of this missing ship. They prepared all the necessary equipment and gear and set out on their search. But when they reached the spot where the ship was supposed to have been sunk, they sensed that they were not alone. Something incomprehensible began to follow them, and their nerves began to tremble. They began to explore their surroundings and finally found the remains of the ship. It had been submerged and destroyed, but remained intact enough to allow them to explore. When the explorers went inside the ship, they sensed that they were not alone. A shadow appeared in the darkness, moving at a speed that human eyes could not grasp. From the shadow came a noise similar to the sound of footsteps, and the explorers began to rush to run. But when they got outside, they found that all their boats were gone, and they were abandoned on this ship alone with an incomprehensible evil. They began to look for a way out, but all the doors were locked, and they could not get out. Night began to fall, and the explorers decided to camp out on the ship. They began to build a fire to keep warm and ward off evil spirits. But as they fell asleep, they heard strange noises, something scratching and rustling in the walls of the ship. Finally, one of the explorers decided to leave the room and check out what was going on. But when he stepped outside, he saw something that made him scream in horror. In front of him stood a shadow with long arms and eyes that glittered in the darkness. He realized it was something inhuman and tried to run back inside. But the shadow quickly caught up to him and encompassed him with its arms. The other explorers heard his screams and ran outside, but it was too late. They saw their colleague being lifted into the air and disappearing into the darkness, leaving only a piercing scream. Terrified, the remaining explorers decided to flee to their ship, but the shadow they had seen earlier began to pursue them, slowly but surely approaching. The explorers knew they had to do something to stop the shadowy creature. They began to hide and run, but the shadow would not leave them alone. One by one, their colleagues disappeared without a trace, leaving the rest of the team in utter panic and despair. Finally, they found their rescue boat and began rowing toward their ship at full speed. But the shadow was not about to give up and continued to pursue them, catching up with every passing moment. When they finally reached their ship, they were completely crippled and wounded, but they were alive. But the shadow didn't stop. It began to attack the ship, which faced destructive forces never seen before. The explorers realized that they could not stay here any longer. Their lives were in danger. They began evacuating to another ship and sailing away from the island, leaving behind the curse and the dark legend of the missing ship. From that day on, no one dared go near that island. Legend had it that the island was haunted by a spirit who punished anyone who violated its seclusion. The shadow the explorers saw was a symbol that there was something scary and inexplicable on this island. However, no one knew what became of the disappearing explorers, and their disappearance remained a mystery.